Welcome to Pacific Northwest Outdoors. My name's Chris, and I wanted to show you some time-lapse footage of weeding and preparing my raised beds for all of the vegetables and lettuce and stuff that I'm going to be planting this season. But before I did that, I wanted to come out here and talk about a couple of things. Number one is what you see behind me. So this right here, these yellow flowers, is what's known as scotch broom. And scotch broom is a species of pea. It's actually in the legume family, and it's native originally to Europe, but it came over here at some point, and unfortunately it's a massively invasive species here in the Pacific Northwest and in California. In spring, it gets these gorgeous yellow flowers, and then in summertime it has these little seed pods that actually pop. They actually burst open to sort of throw their seeds out into the wild, and that's why it propagates so much, and why you can see all of this behind me. It's so thick and dense. And last year when I moved in, this is actually the empty lot next to my house. Last year when I moved in, there were maybe 2 dozen of these plants scattered around this about half-acre area, and now as you can see it's just completely taken over. But basically what happens is loggers will come in and they'll clear an area, and then they plant saplings to sort of regrow that area of the forest, and that takes place over, you know, a dozen or so years or longer. And but what happens is when they cut down all the trees, these come up and take over. And it's estimated that scotch broom is responsible for approximately $47 million in lost timber production every year just in Oregon. So that's not even counting California or Washington, where it's also a problem. Just in Oregon, $47 million annually in lost timber production because of these gorgeous little yellow flowers behind me. So for me, and what I would suggest for you, is if you happen to see any of these scotch brooms in your yard, or if you're in the Pacific Northwest, is just try to eradicate them. Get rid of them completely. They are legumes, so they have the little pods that put nitrogen back into the soil at the bottom, but I mean, they're perennial also, so if you just chop them off, yeah, you'll have better nitrogen in the soil, but you're probably just going to have more scotch broom the following year. So for me, every time I find one on my property, I completely yank it out, I try to get rid of it, or else my whole yard's going to end up looking like this, which I definitely do not want. So that's the scotch brooms. One other thing that I did want to talk about are those Jiffy peat pods. So I've talked about this in the past, how I just don't like those peat pods. I didn't really have any solid evidence to back that up though. So as I was going through and planting out some of my planter boxes, I was pulling up kale from last year that I had just taken those Jiffy peat pods and plunked them into the soil. And the kale itself throughout the year seemed to be a little bit stunted. You know, I couldn't prove that it was the Jiffy peat pods, but it just seemed like it should be doing better. I got decent production out of the kale, but I felt like it could have been a lot better. So as I was pulling up the old kale to make room for new stuff this year, I found the problem, and it's just that the roots did not penetrate very far outside that little Jiffy peat pod that I planted them in. So I did a video earlier about how this year I'm cutting the Jiffy peat pod mesh off completely to give the roots, you know, no barrier, and to give the roots room to get out there and actually spread out and grow bigger plants. So I'm going to roll some footage here of the ones that I pulled up, and you'll see that that a bunch of them, some of them had decent root production where it actually pushed through the mesh and got out into the soil, and those ones actually tended to be the better ones. They seemed to do okay. But the ones that were more stunted, you could tell very clearly that it was just because of these peat pods, the roots couldn't get out, and so the plant couldn't grow big. We got the Coast Guard chopper coming over. Let me flip it around here. Okay, love the Coast Guard chopper, but it is pretty loud. So anyway, so long story short, the Jiffy peat pods, I can't really recommend them. I would recommend just planting into you know, just a regular seed cell tray that you put your own soil in, and then you can pop the seedlings out and transplant them or put them right into the ground or whatever you're going to do. For my bigger plants, I like the 18 pack that you can get. It's just one black tray with 18 brown, smaller, like 4-inch pots in it. And that seems to work pretty well. I plant anywhere from 2 to 4 seeds in each of those pots, and they come up nicely. They got plenty of room for the seedlings' roots to expand, and if I've got multiple in one of those pots, I can just break them apart and transplant them into bigger pots as they germinate. So that makes a lot more sense to me. Plus, you can reuse those year after year, and you don't have to pay for the Jiffy, the little peat pellets or peat pods year after year. So makes sense, you know, from a cost savings perspective, and it's a lot easier. It gives your plants a better chance of survival, and you don't have to take the extra step of cutting the mesh off. So it saves you time, it saves you money. It seems like a no-brainer to me. I cannot recommend those Jiffy peat pods unless maybe you're just a real beginner gardener starting out, in which case they do okay. Okay, so it's starting to rain a little bit harder, so I'm going to get this camera inside, and let's take a look at some of the raised beds and planters that I've been planting out over the last week or so. Enjoy. Okay, so it's been a couple weeks, maybe even 3 weeks since I started the planting. I don't know if you could see from the time-lapse video, but a lot of the lettuce that I had put into these beds was a little bit wilty when I put it in. That's from being overwatered while it was in the seed trays. So they didn't all make it, but some of them did. So the kale's really perking up. You can see some of the lettuce looks really good, just starting to go crazy. And some spots are a little thin, but for the most part everything came up and looks really good. So this is planter box 1, planter box 2, same thing. Lettuce is starting to take off. I've got one cilantro that I'm letting go to seed here, a couple of kales, and garlic. Also been a couple of weeks for bed 1. Some of the squash that I've planted isn't really taking off. That's a winter squash. It hasn't done too much, though. There are some flowers starting to show up. This guy right here is the acorn squash, if you saw my acorn squash video. So that's really the only one that looked good out of those ones that got really leggy. Kale's starting to take off. Same situation here. A lot of the lettuce is doing okay, but I still have more space. I can plant some lettuce. These are all radishes through here. Dino kale. That big guy right there is a quinoa. Never grown that before, but it's starting to get some Little buds at the top there, so that's good. And then we turn around. This is bed 2. I've planted out some tomatoes. These are Oregon Spring, Yellow Pear, Hybrid Grape, and Big Beefs. Plus my garlic still in the back here. Along the back fence, Big Beef tomato, winter squash, Big Beef winter squash. And finally we got bed 3 and 4. Beds 3 and 4. Some of the lettuce I left in there from last year because it's still good. We're still eating it. That's these guys here and a couple of plants back there. So I really planted this whole thing out with more lettuce. You can see little lettuce starting to pop up all throughout here. A little bit more there. This row here, this is all spinach coming up. Everything's looking really good. This is going to be a full bed of spinach and lettuce and kale. And then actually a few onions over here. These are onions. Bed 4, I haven't fully planted out yet, but I got some tomatoes in the back. A few peppers up front. I'm not expecting the peppers to do much in this climate, but I figured I'd try them out. And then the front of this bed is mostly empty for now, except for a couple of cucumbers I put right up front. And they're not doing spectacular, but they do seem to be getting a little bit bigger. So that's the update. Hope you guys enjoyed it. See you next time. Hey everybody, this has been Pacific Northwest Outdoors. My name's Chris, and if you liked the video you just saw, please click the like button. I would really appreciate it. If you'd like to see more videos, please click subscribe. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day, and cheers.